to do this too. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special meeting. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Levenstein.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Roll call, Ms. Clerk.
Mr. Duray. Ms. Green.
Here.
Mr. Howard. Mr. Lamar. Mr. Levenstein.
Here.
Ms. Mineo.
Here.
Mr. Straight Iron.
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Here.
Good evening, everybody. I'm pleased that we are all here to talk about literacy in the New Bergen Large City School District this evening. I think that we are all in agreement that reading is critical to our students' lifelong success. The good news is that we are increasing our conversations about literacy across the district and having conversations about how to meet the needs of our students. We have also increased our collaboration and communication with teachers, listening to their concerns, questions, and recommendations. Just last week, Mrs. Moran, NTA President, and I, along with Dr. Farrell, Mr. Bayer, and the Director of ELA, Director of Language Acquisition, and the Director of Elementary Schools, hosted our first formal literacy forum. 78 teachers were present for the forum, and where teachers had the opportunity to submit questions to us and hear responses from the panel. Ms. Moran and I both agreed that this was a success and will be planning for future similar opportunities of collaboration. This evening, along with the directors, Ms. Nielsen, Dr. Martinez-Morales, Ms. Haywood, and representatives from American Reading Company, Ms. Larson, Amelia, and Ms. Elias, Rebecca, will present on the following: interpreting and responding to the audit findings. So at our board meeting in April, we heard from the Ulster BOCES who conducted the literacy audit. We were unable to have time to debrief their findings, so we'll address those this evening. We'll address the recommendations from the auditors. We'll frame the New Bergen Large City School District K-8 literacy model, and we'll discuss research in the science of reading. We have 1 hour and a lot of information to share with you. I know that the slides that were shared with you are very dense with a lot of information on them. We're going to talk to those slides, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. In your folders, I provided you with lots of information, articles, and additional information that is responding to some of your questions and concerns that we've heard repeatedly across the district, specifically around research on teaching reading, phonemic awareness, and phonics, as well as a glossary of terms that we use when discussing literacy and teaching reading. You also have index cards in your folder. So as we go through each section of the presentation, you can write down a question, and then in the end, we'll know which section your question pertains to. If we run out of time, I'll collect those cards and I'll be able to respond to those questions. I did ask for questions prior. I have a few from Trustee Green, but if you'd like to take a moment to write down one specific question that you're hoping to have answered tonight on your one of your green colored index cards, Ms. Haywood will come around and collect those so we can ensure that those are addressed this evening. I'll give you a moment to do that. To write down a specific question that you would like. The others are aligned with sections of the presentation tonight, and I'll call them out at each section as we'll go through. Okay, I'm going to get started. If you have one of those cards, you can just put it up front, and Ms. Haywood will come around and collect it so we can ensure that and respond to that. Okay, so to be honest, this is my first time doing a workshop for a board, so this is kind of exciting, and I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening. Our first section of the presentation is interpreting and responding to the findings and addressing the recommendation. Questions for this section will be on your purple card. Okay. So one of the first questions, and this is actually one of Trustee Green's questions, they wanted to know about Hegarty. And the auditors provided information in their report stating that teachers had been trained in Hegarty at that time, which actually wasn't 100% accurate. We did have, at that time, Hegarty training planned for our teachers in K2 and our AIS teachers, and they recently had the training last week. So 171 staff members were trained in Hegarty. And why Hegarty? Hegarty is a resource that's aligned with the science of reading research, and it was in response and collaboration with the teachers who had a request for increased phonemic awareness resources. And we have data to support that we needed that. So we were able to provide this resource for them. They have received the professional development and will have a district expectation to fully implement in the 2023-24 school year. Please note that this is a Tier 2 and Tier 3 resource. That'll come up again later in our presentation. Our next recommendation and finding really is around data and common assessments. So they stated that we should have a common protocol for reviewing and analyzing student data. And absolutely, we agree with that, and we actually have a protocol ready to go to be implemented to share with teachers, who will also be provided with professional development on this use prior to the opening of the school year next year. This is a way for us to review student work and how our students are doing in a common practice across the district. Additionally, we're creating a way to itemize the rubric scores in Infinite Campus, which is our student management system, and this is where I house the data on how our students are performing. The current common assessments that we have, they assess writing. And so sometimes we get the question, why is it just writing? And for our K-5 students, the reason why we're assessing their is this too loud? Because I feel like it's really loud to me. Okay, I'm so loud anyway. Why are we assessing the writing? Because we have other tools that assess students' skills. We have our K-8 iReady diagnostic tool that's universal across the district, and we have our IRLA and ANEAL. So to then assess those same skills again on the common assessment would be over-assessing the students. We have that data already, but we need to know how they're doing in their writing, because reading and writing are intertwined and they go hand in hand together. Okay. Yep. Okay, the next finding again continues to be about common assessments and where do we, how do teachers access and provide feedback on these assessments. So we have a shared drive, a K-12 curriculum drive that has a specific folder in it for standards assessed documents. All teachers can access it. So they can access it horizontally and vertically. If they want to see what's happening, what are students being assessed on, and what should they know in the grades below them or above them, they can also access that information. The assessment scores, as I've already indicated, are housed in Infinite Campus. And I already spoke about the other tools that we have to monitor student progress. And again, you're saying this is a literacy workshop, why are you giving me this information? But these were responding to the findings from the auditors. And that was where we initiated the conversation about having this workshop tonight. Our next finding has to do with professional development and continued training and providing teachers with time. We keep hearing that they want more time and they want to understand what they are to be teaching. And we want to really ensure, this is really important, that we ensure that our taught practices match our what we say in writing we're doing. So what is it that our units of study say we should be teaching in each unit at each grade level? Does our teaching practice match that? And then how we assess it, does it assess what we're teaching? So it's really important that we articulate that and we understand what we're supposed to be doing, how we're supposed to be doing it, and why we're doing it. So we are in the process of creating and revising, actually, district-wide SOP, a standard operating procedure, to articulate what the expectations are that will be rolled out for the upcoming school year. Additionally, teachers are saying they need time, and we want to provide them with that time in their PLCs, their professional learning communities, to lesson plan with their colleagues. And we'll also provide protocols and recommendations for how to do that work moving forward. Okay, our next finding has to do with information pertaining to our self-contained classes and classes where Spanish is taught. So before I go into speaking about our dual language classes in Spanish, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Bayo, second, to discuss self-contained classes.
Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. So this actually was an important conversation we had as part of our literacy conversation with the NTA. And this is an age-old conversation that special educators are very attuned to. And the question comes down to, how do you expect a fifth grader, for example, to access curriculum when they are on a first grade or a kindergarten level? And that's the conversations we continue to have with our staff. So we are well aware of that. When you look back and when IDEA was reauthorized, it made it very clear there's no such thing as a special ed curriculum. It's general ed curriculum that our students are required to access in ways that we are adept and expert at have how to do. It's not about changing what you teach. It's about giving them the same standards and the same curriculum, but changing your inroad, your strategy you use. We have, since I've been here, had a cadence with our administrators working directly with buildings around this and helping teachers to build out their strategies. Pre-COVID, that was a very, very well-oiled machine. We even had our integrated co-teaching modules that we introduced where strategies were part of that conversation. Post-COVID, we recognize our students have been especially impacted by what's occurred, and we're revamping that. We're committed to meeting, I've talked with Ms. Nielsen, of creating some very tailored professional development for our self-contained teachers starting next year. We've already done some of this already this year, and I've introduced that to the board, where we provided what's called specially designed instruction and explicitly designed instruction. It's how you teach all kids, but they're strategies that work particularly well for our kids. And we've introduced those through the Regional Partnership Center at both NFA Maine and to some extent at Heritage, and we're continuing that work next year. So one of the areas our kids particularly struggle with is that real decoding component of reading, the synthetic component of reading. It was our division that actually introduced Sunday to this district almost 7 years ago, I believe, because we saw it as a great tool to build that particular skill in an area that tends to be pervasively difficult for our kids. So when we did that, we did a Sunday implementation that included providing it to our self-contained teachers, and then we've been expanding that every year to our co-teaching classes in elementary school. We've now built up into our middle schools. It was introduced to the IAS teachers, and they use it. So we recognize how important it is that inroad to reading has to be part of our continuum, and we're proud of the fact that Sunday has made some real inroads with how kids are able to read. And finally, the one thing I want to say is that we had talked to the NTA and Ms. Moran, and we're starting a task force. We had one pre-COVID. It was interrupted, and we are going to revamp that. And on June 13th, we are going to resurrect the task force. And I invite teachers to come, and let's have these healthy conversations about how we make sure our kids in special education have the same opportunities and make the same progress as all kids, knowing that strategies and specific ways in which our work may look different is embedded into our practice. So that's, I hope, would answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Bayer. So continuing on to talk about the recommendations that are, what are the resources that we have in Spanish and how can they be reviewed within the structure for our dual language programs. So our ARC themes are, and units and skills in Spanish are aligned to those in English. However, the books utilized within the units vary because ARC uses authentic text in Spanish, which is actually culturally responsive practice, so there's not a direct translation. So for instance, if the unit that the students or the theme that they're working on is the ecosystem, the books in Spanish will teach about the ecosystem, but they're not direct translations to the English text being provided to students. So more professional development is organized for the 23-24 school year, and we'll continue to have those conversations and clarify. The next finding really is about expectations again, being clear about what we expect, about time and professional development. So as I indicated previously, we will be creating and sharing a standard operating procedure for teaching literacy. What is the implementation that we expect to see in the literacy block in the 120 minutes? What does the whole group instruction look like? What does the small group instruction look like? What does the monitoring of student progress look like? And how do we know that we're meeting the needs of our students? One of the most exciting to me recommendations that we got from the audit was creating a catalog of exemplar student work. And this is we actually have this in progress, but this is exciting to me because when we talk about student work in teacher groups and cohorts, and we look at the student work, so we come to the table, we bring our student work with us, we have the rubric on how we're going to grade that work, but then what does an exemplar look like? How do we know that the child has really mastered what we taught them? And so this will be a great way for teachers to have that conversation and us to look at authentic pieces of our own students' work from right here in the district. We'll continue with our leadership learning series. This is where we work with principals directly to coach them on literacy practices and strategies and what are we implementing in the classroom when they're doing their walkthroughs, when they're having their conversations with teachers. How do we know that we're inspecting what we expect to see? How are we doing that work together with them? And then, of course, we'll continue with our implementation and ARC training, not only with ARC coaches, who I can assure you have been well vetted and have a culmination of experience and years of teaching in the classroom. We have made some changes based on feedback that we've gotten from principals and teachers, but I think we have a really great team moving forward. I don't think so, I know so. And we, of course, have our district instructional coaches and directors to support that work on site also. So that's our first part of the presentation. If we'll now move on to framing out our expectations for our K-8 literacy program. If you have specific questions about this section, these questions can be written on your yellow index cards. Okay, so this is really important. This talks about our Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction. And we know on the evening that we received the report from our auditors that we had a parent who got up and was very, very vocal about the tiered instruction. So I want to clarify Tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction, who receives what, and then what we're looking for. So Tier 1 is and this is talking about literacy, but it applies to all content areas. So Tier 1 is the instruction, the on-grade level instruction that students receive whole group from their teachers. So if I'm in a third grade class, what are the third grade standards that I should be being taught? My teacher is teaching the whole class, and we're getting the same access to that education. So around phonemic awareness, phonics fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, and written expression, you can see there what the whole group will receive and the resources used for that. All students have access to that. Tier 2, now we've finished our whole group instruction and we're going to go into small group. So this is where the teacher will differentiate instruction. So these are additional supports will be provided in small group based on skill to students performing 1 grade level below. So what extra does that group of students need, and what are the skills that we need to focus on? Again, these are the components of literacy that students will receive and the resources that the teachers have to teach these. So it's not just ARC here. You can see additional resources. Tier 3, these are the students who are performing 2 or more grade levels below their grade level. These students will be, this is additional support for them. They'll be pulled out of the class to go in a small group to work on the skill with other students needing extra support in those foundational skills to support them. So they receive the on-grade level instruction, but we know they need a little bit more in a smaller group, so we're going to take them out of the classroom to really focus on those skills. The visual to the right, the green, yellow, and red, this is a visual that we've shared with teachers. Again, clarifying the same thing that I really just said. What is Tier 1 instruction? What are the supports and intervention? And how do we deliver those? Who do we deliver those to? Same with Tier 2 and Tier 3. Teachers were shared this information. We have a monthly newsletter from the elementary side of curriculum and instruction called the Goldie Gazette, and this was shared with teachers there, but we'll also be sharing out as we continue to really focus on this work. Okay, so I keep saying this, but this is important. This is important because I think we need to understand some of the populations that we're serving in our class. We were originally drawn, prior to my arrival in CNI 5 years ago, to American Reading Company because of their supports for ELs and multilingual learners. So I want everyone to see the amount of students, the number of ELs that we have in the 9 buildings, K-5, accessing ANIL. ANIL is the Spanish side of ERLA. So we have 924 ELs in our elementary schools. Of 512 of that 924 are students in bilingual programs, and 395 of them are newcomers. You can see in the pie graph there that 54.4% of our ELs are accessing ANIL resources. Those are the resources that are being taught, that used to teach them and to assess them. So this is in their native language. We're meeting them where they are. Eventually, as they make progress, students test out of ANIL and they'll go into the ERLA. They don't stay there forever, but this is how we meet them initially with their language. Okay. Looking toward the research. This will be your blue cards if you have a question. So I love the conversation that we keep having in multiple venues about research. Research for literacy success. So there's a lot of research. There's a lot of research, and the science of reading, we keep talking about the science of reading. To be clear, the science of reading is a body of research that spans over 4 decades, okay? There are so many experts weighing in on this research and providing information to us. We have to look at the analysis of our instructional practices and see where we've had repeated success. And that guides our work and how we teach literacy and teach reading and writing. So there's also been a big focus from the media, which I think when you think of a ship going straight, if we're talking about all the components of reading, and you've heard me say before, there are 5 pillars, and we're going to talk more about that. If we only pull out a couple of those pillars to talk about, it tips the ship, because you have to have all of those components to really teach the reading. Right now, when we talk about, we've heard about this podcast, Sold a Story. It's a wonderful podcast, and it really has parents in there asking great questions. But because of what is being cast, the information, we're not getting the whole package. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind. We have to have not only the phonics and the phonemic awareness, but we have to have all the components. Oh, there's the 5 pillars that I was just talking about. So we talked about this. This was what the audit was originally based on. So since the national reading panel, we've learned a lot about how diverse content knowledge in not only literacy, but science, social studies, art, and other content areas matter to our reading comprehension. What I want to also highlight here is that what is the role that it plays in literacy development and writing instruction. As I indicated previously, there's a natural relationship between reading and writing and what's involved in teaching reading to English language learners and multilingual students. We've become much more aware of the strengths that students from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds bring to the classroom, such as differing ways of using language, telling stories, and interpreting texts. Just as important, we've become more aware of how complex and uncertain the work of reading instruction really is. What else did I want to share with you here? You'll see that the current science of reading confirms a lot of what the National Reading Panel found 22 years ago, including how important it is to provide systematic instruction and phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. But since that time, researchers filled a lot of the gaps in those areas, explored other areas, and learned other ways in which effective reading instruction depends also on teachers' expertise and judgment. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this, but at this point, I am going to invite Ms. Amelia Larson to the podium. I just want to introduce Ms. Amelia Larson, who is an Executive Vice President in Innovations from and Academic Partnerships at the American Reading Company. She most recently was an Assistant Superintendent of Pasco County, Florida Public Schools, and previously spearheaded the district-wide implementation of MTSS, which you also have heard a lot about here. Well, that's what we refer to when we talk about RTI. Amelia is a licensed school psychologist and has served as an educational consultant, delivering professional development and support to schools, school district and national organizations and state departments of education nationwide in her efforts to update and realign curriculum frameworks, instruction, assessment, and implement an integrated multi-tiered system of supports to improve outcomes for all. With that, I welcome Amelia. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and again, questions are very welcome. We just heard Andrea talk about the coverage of the media, and the media did a great job calling attention to a part of the 5 pillars that was not being implemented well. But when so much attention is paid to one area, people are very tempted to overlook the other areas. Right? This happened before in the 1970s and 1980s. There were a lot of studies on comprehension, and people were not talking about phonics. And people stopped paying attention to phonics. So we need to make sure that the boat stays afloat by paying attention to a comprehensive view of literacy. And to do that, a nonprofit organization, the Knowledge Matters Campaign, started this campaign about, yes, foundational skills are critical, but we cannot stop there. Knowledge building is absolutely critical. So they reviewed different programs. They vetted different programs, and one of the programs they said is doing this really well is American Reading Company. You can go to their website, knowledgematters.org, to find out more about it. But they have 14 members that are researchers that are very, very well respected, and they wrote this position statement. Yes, we must pay attention to foundational skills. If we do not go beyond that, we're going to fail our kids. So what they propose is, as knowledge-building curricula, are curricula that go deep into content, provide equitable access to content. So even if my reading skills are not on grade level, I can still access the thinking curriculum, okay? And also combine knowledge building with the other 2 essential components, which is systematic, explicit foundational skills, and regular close reading of engaging texts. So, whoa, sorry about that. Andrea, I might need some help here. Okay. Let me see. I think I can figure this out. Let me see here. It was just a preview. It's a very good strategy. But so, American Reading Company is a knowledge-building curricula that is really an alternative to a basal curricula, which was very common before. A basal is a curricula that jumps from topic to topic. Kids read a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and really don't have time to build deep knowledge. Knowledge-building curricula like ARC, they are divided into units of study that go very deep into content. So the reading, the writing, the speaking, the listening, the language is embedded in content. So Andrea just talked about Tier 1. So when you talk about ARC, the Tier 1 components of ARC does include foundational skills in whole group instruction for grades K and 2. It does include reading complex text as a learning community. Every kid has access to that, writing to that complex text, and then having opportunities for kids to engage in further study in an area that they are more interested in. So in reading, writing, discussing complex texts, you'll see a little bit. The teacher is guiding the whole community. Even if a child is a fifth grader reading at a second grade level, they are accessing that grade level instruction, that vocabulary, that knowledge building. And when they apply it to an area that they are studying further, they are a part of a community and they have access to multiple texts at a variety of complexity. So let's go a little bit deeper, because ensuring students learn to read is a part of the recent research that is critical. We are not abandoning that. And at ARC, you can see here that we do have whole group foundational skills instruction. There's a scope and sequence. There's daily scripted curricula that taps into phonemic awareness, phonics, and word study, spelling, word study. And once the teacher is done with the whole group instruction, there's an opportunity for the kids to apply it immediately in their word study notebook. The word study notebook is an opportunity that I heard this, I learned it, can I apply it by myself? And the kids engage in encoding, decoding, spelling, and reading of decodable text in the word study notebook every day. So that part is there. We have a foundational skills scope and sequence that starts in pre-K, because some kids come into kindergarten day 1 and they don't even know how to hold a book. It's okay. We can handle it. Okay? No labels, no stigma. We just flood them with books. And so from early K all the way through second grade, you can see a scope and sequence that is aligned to the Common Core. And the phonics, if you go down, you see the critical skills. We have print concepts, read aloud immersion. We don't have to wait to learn about topics. We do that through read alouds. And then goes into letter sound correspondence, letter formation. Then we apply that into words, and we continue all the way to morphological awareness. Okay, so this is in your curriculum. It is too important not to be. The teacher frameworks are scripted for them, but it still gives them an opportunity to see, okay, these are the kids that I have in front of me. I need to do more of this or less of this. They are able to make some decisions. I showed you already that after that, the students go into their word study notebook to apply what they have learned. And they also have an opportunity to read text every day. Now, in kindergarten, if they cannot do that by themselves, they can do it with a peer, they can do it with a coach. We don't want kids to stare at books if they cannot do it by themselves. So we have protocols to meet the needs of different kids. In terms of the differentiated instruction, so every kid gets the whole group instruction. In terms of the differentiated instruction, we have the ERLA and the ENIL, the assessments that locate where kids are. Some kids are above, and you can still give them what they need. Some kids are multiple grades below. They don't need everything A through Z, but what are the critical skills that they are missing so we can move them forward and accelerate? There you have very scripted lessons that are matched to the needs of the students, and they also have opportunities to, again, apply phonics skills, encoding, decoding, so spelling, and then reading in context. So you will see there too some of the decodable texts. Guessing is not the way we learn how to read, although incoming kindergartners do use pictures to read the world because they don't have letter sounds yet. It is our job to move them from picture readers to word readers. But we do not stop there. So ARC Core, what you chose to implement beyond the foundational skills, truly builds knowledge of the world. There are 4 units in English or Spanish, and they are focused on genre, social studies, and science. Each unit, the students have an opportunity to really develop deep knowledge about the content. As a part of that, they have very diverse books to learn the topic that they are studying. And the books come at a wide variety of complexity because they are researching. Sometimes I need to look at a book that has more pictures. I'm studying those images all the way to more complex texts. The students are not only reading independently, but they are reading with the class. So as a part of this knowledge building, they conduct research. Each unit has research questions that the students are studying, debating about, arguing about. You will see kindergartners fighting over spiders, whether they are arachnoids or insects. That's what they fight about, and they talk like that. So starting in kindergarten, the kids are engaged in these types of research. All the books come with the units to ensure equitable access to all kids. It's not like, if you want to buy these books, if you want to meet the needs of these kids, you need to buy. No, all the books are there, because we don't want to leave any kids out. That knowledge building is what builds their vocabulary. And we know knowledge building and vocabulary really tap into and impact reading comprehension. So because the kids are really studying the topics in depth, listening and reading and talking about the same topic across 9 weeks, they grow vocabulary and comprehension 4 times faster. So you cannot hold any kids out of that grade level thinking. Like I said before, the teachers are reading texts from kindergarten. They are reading aloud to students, and then the students have also books that they can go into to learn more about the topic. Finally, what Andrea said earlier, that the 5 pillars on the National Reading Panel really did not address writing, but they did not, they just talked about reading, but of course writing is a part of the equation. So in ARC Core, students are marshaling and communicating evidence of their learning every day. They read, they write, they talk, they collaborate, they debate every day, okay? That also impacts their decoding. Please don't think that decoding is only happening one time a day. When they are reading, when they are writing, they are applying foundational skills. So you can see here, this is kindergarten. At the end of the year, kindergartners have 4 units. Do you want to be a scientist? Zoology, ecology, entomology. At the end of the year, they are writing these big words. You can see it there. Your kids are now studying entomology. I invite you to go see it. See what they are doing. See what they are talking about. But their growth of knowledge grows with the encoding, with the decoding. Everything is developing at the same time. Finally, what is really critical in terms of bringing the research to life is deepening understanding of what is read. If I read one text about one topic, okay. But if I read multiple texts about multiple topics, or multiple texts on the same topics, I have to learn to connect these ideas so I can defend my position. And that's what our kids are doing across K-12. I know you don't have all the grades. They are really deepening their understanding of the topics by engaging and connecting complex ideas across multiple texts. That's how they can construct and communicate their arguments. And you can see the proof in their writing. So here you can see 2 students that have different levels of writing, different levels of reading. They are still a part of the learning community. Both access the thinking curriculum, the grade level knowledge, the grade level vocabulary, because we cannot hold anybody out of that. So this happens across all of the units, and at the end of each unit, the students have work to prove what they have learned. And they can present that to the community. When I brought this to my district, I collaborated with the aquarium. I lived in Tampa. The aquarium director said, I am choosing new animals, and I want your kids to tell me what animals I should bring next. So you can bring this to life and make it real for them, so they see that what they are learning, they can apply to any situation. And this is really what it's all about. I hope that you can see that by implementing our core with fidelity, not only are you hitting on foundational skills, but you are really elevating their cognitive thinking so they are able to face life. Yes? Oh, did I talk too long?
No,
No,
you're right
okay.
on time. We're
Sorry.
going to
All right.
transition into questions.
Thank you so much, and I'll take any questions.
So I had actually talked to Amelia ahead of time, so I just want to clear up something, because I said if I couldn't explain well what special education is, I wanted you to help me, right? So I said that there's no such thing as a special ed curriculum, right? We have an obligation both morally and legally to provide the same curriculum to our special ed students, with few exceptions. Students who are ultimately assessed, there is an alternate approach to them. You're a school psychologist. I live and breathe what you do for a living, and we live in a world that sometimes the outside doesn't see. And what it's about is really understanding how kids learn, and when there's a disability, what those barriers how they may impact in learning, right? So when you talk about, and this is sort of the heart, is this myth that I have a kid who can't master first grade standards. I kind of brought this up earlier. I cannot move out of first grade and give them fifth grade. That's irresponsible in some people's opinion. Why would I do that when they can't do first grade? What we talked about very briefly, and I'm very open about this, is that you mentioned the thinking curriculum. From a school psychologist and from someone who's in my background, that resonates with me. Can you just spend a little bit time helping us understand, while there are skills, how that matters in terms of ensuring that special education students, general education students, L students get the same benefit from what we do for them?
I think the first thing it's important for us to remember is that if you think about reading and blood pressure in the same way, they are on one continuum. What causes high blood pressure that is bad for you, if you don't do it, you have low blood pressure, right? That's a hard thing to say for a Brazilian. So in reading is the same thing. Kids that have, like their brain is wiring for reading, there are certain things happening. They are able to detect sounds within words, decode, encode, and they take off if they read a lot, right? Kids that have difficulty with that have more difficulty. So I think the first thing is, and I say that because people think that kids that have a special, like a dyslexia or learning disabilities, need something completely different, which is not true. They still need a knowledge-building curricula. They still need exposure to grade-level thinking, grade-level concepts, grade-level vocabulary in a community where they debate and talk and defend their points and write. Now, this is where the design of curriculum really matters, because you have to have a combination of this thinking curriculum and then the ability to differentiate. And what you said is critical, because like with ARC, the grade level thinking curriculum, everybody's there. But when they apply it to a topic they want to study further, you have the differentiated supports. You have texts at varying levels of complexity, and you have more supports for writing. But you saw the example that I showed. One is a special ed kid, one is not. They are both a part of that. So we have to stop this idea that certain kids don't need or are not ready. I think that's what it is, are not ready for grade level thinking. Just because I have a lower skill, it doesn't mean that I cannot do the grade level thinking and grade level talking and grade level exchange. You can't close the gap if you hold them back. You got to stop the bleeding. So the differentiation accelerates, but the peers are not waiting for me. So I have to be a part of the grade level thinking curricula and receive differentiated supports to change my growth trajectory. But you can't stop me from doing the thinking with you. In my schools, kids started sitting differently. Special ed kids that were always like withdrawn or they got pulled out, they started sitting differently, sharing first, because even our supports changed. So I can go on. I'm very passionate about this
You spoke
space.
much better than I ever could, so I appreciate you doing that.
Don't hold them
And
out
I
of
think
it.
this is kind of the work we're going to continue doing forward with the task force, but I really appreciate you laying that groundwork.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll probably call you back up here to help address some of the questions. Ms. Green?
Okay. I think that this should be done for the teachers who are in the classroom that are actually using these materials, because there are some teachers that believe that ARC is not in alignment with the science of reading. And although this is nice for you to tell us, this needs to be done in front of the teachers who are teaching it so that you can hear firsthand how they actually feel. I can't give you secondhand information on how they feel, but I think that this needs to be done in front of teachers, because there are teachers who feel extremely strong that this does not follow science of reading research. They have been looking for research that supports ARC, and they have not found any. So I think that you need to really do this for teachers who are in the classroom that are actually teaching. This is nice you did it for us, but we're not on the front line. And I think you need to speak to the people that are on the front line so that you can hear their actual concerns and address them directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. And actually, part of what happened in our,
If I'm invited back, I'll come.
I think she just invited you.
If it's up to me, I will
I think
invite
Ms.
you
Green just
back.
invited
And
you.
I'll tell you, like, I do spend time on the whole group phonics instruction. I do a lot of modeling on that because typically it's needed. But you invite me back, I'll come. This is a pretty area. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate, Ms. Green, thank you for that, because what happened last week, a week ago Monday, at our first literacy forum, which was the collaboration between the NTA and the Division of Curriculum and Instruction, a lot of those questions were asked and addressed to the 78 people that were present. Additionally, they had the opportunity to submit more questions that were following up on an FAQ that'll respond in writing to them. And Ms. Moran and I have agreed to continue that, so we can certainly invite our partners to collaborate on that. That's a wonderful idea. At this time, you have submitted some questions. I'll respond to these. I may ask some of the team to elaborate, and then if there are other questions, we can address them. I think we have 7 minutes till our official board meeting. I'm watching the time. So these were general questions that you came with on the green cards. The first question says, are there any CSD administrators using ARC data for a master's or a doctorate degree? My response to that is not that I'm aware of. I don't have knowledge of that. Have the BOCES auditors been hired by other school districts to review other reading programs besides ARC? Again, I'm not sure if they were specifically auditing reading programs, but our auditors were hired to audit our literacy program to see if it meets the recommendations of the National Reading Panel, the Science of Reading, and the Knowledge Matters campaign. How do students learn best, and what are the resources that we need to support our students in the New Bergen Large City School District? Does every school have PLC times at every grade level? Yes, every school has that built-in time built into their schedules. It might not be on the same 6-day rotation, but all schools have PLC model in their building. We're really working on what those PLCs look like and what the cycle of them, because not all buildings do it the same way, but they have the opportunity to collaborate. Are special ed teachers, bilingual teachers, and E&L teachers involved in professional development at appropriate levels? Yes. In-district and out-of-district professional development, absolutely. Is there a possibility some teachers have not had enough training in phonics? If true, how would this possible problem be identified and fixed? Yeah, I think that it's true. I think not everybody's always able to attend all professional development that's offered. We move teachers around from grade level to grade level sometimes, and so that professional development looks different at different grade levels, and it's fixed by us listening to the teachers and asking them what they need and how we can be supportive. It's fixed by us talking to the principals to identify the needs of their specific building. It's fixed by reviewing data on a 6-week cycle to see how our students are doing. And it's fixed by giving people a safe space to not be perfect, but to work on the best that they can. It's creating that safe space to be able to do this really hard work. Has recent banning of books affected comprehension negatively? I don't know that we have the data to answer that question specifically, and I don't think in the New Bergen Large City School District specifically we've had much book banning. So, okay. We're moving into our blue section. I love these questions. Do our elementary reading programs include the entire class reading the same book so that they can all discuss and write reports on its content? So again, it's that tiered approach. The whole class gets access to the material on grade level, and then it's differentiated based on their levels of reading. So each classroom has sets of leveled libraries. So when the students go in to do this research, they're picking books on their reading level, on their independent reading level, so that they're able to access that material and then respond to the research questions and create their reports. What specific programs has the district implemented to ensure that parents of children aged 0 to 4 are engaged in a reading schedule with their children? Wow, I love this question so much because it's really important that we get the kids at birth and expose them to language, not just written language, but oral language. It's exposing them to experiences in the world around them. So I do believe that, and for the upcoming school year, we'll be bringing back Newburgh Basics really strong, and this is going to be the work that we're going to do. So I love this question. Scripted instructions, protocols, learning text 5 times faster. Maybe this, hold on. I think this is. Okay. Do you want to elaborate? I haven't seen it. Okay. All right. I'll go with this part here. Research science of reading has spread over 40 years, 4 decades. As such, there are new data that measure the 5 pillars. What has been added, which is new? What's old, traditional, has been retained, is a bell curve used for assessment tool? So that's a wonderful question, and I'm actually going to let the voices from the field here respond. Okay, you kind of addressed this already, but the 40 years of research, what's changed? What do we know works better now, and what have we kept that's traditional?
So I think the biggest difference is that the researchers used to work in isolation, and that has really gotten better. So you have linguists, neuroscientists, educators, and psychologists that are coming together. And when they come together, then the convergence of findings that are most important flow to the top. What is different, I think it is really what we know about the reading brain. The neuroimaging studies are fascinating because you can see how the brain changes with instruction. There are parts of the brain that are not there when you come in as a non-reader, and 6 months later, if you scan the brain again, it's now there. So that's kind of fascinating. It shows the power of teachers and instruction to transform the reading brain.
Thank you so much. And I think that might be a good place to stop for this evening because I have about 30